Okay, we're going to get started here. And just so everybody knows, this session will be recorded. Hello, and welcome to Sterling and VMware's Power Block session. I am Megan Moore, Sterling's VMware Partner Business Manager. We know your time is valuable, so we want to thank you for choosing to spend a portion of your day with Sterling and VMware. Before we dive into the demo, I wanted to give you a brief overview of Sterling's capabilities. Sterling is a principal VMware partner and a preferred services partner authorized to sell and service VMware solutions to customers across the nation. With 50 plus technical staff and 75 plus sales staff, all trained on VMware offerings, we are sure to provide you with industry best value on all of your client to cloud IT needs. As you can see from this slide, Sterling holds many VMware competencies, including 2 master services competencies and more coming soon. Next slide, please, Nathan. Sterling offers complete customized solutions from client to cloud. We serve on multiple federal, state, and local government contracts and support all industry verticals. Security is of the utmost importance at Sterling. We have a robust, secure supply chain, including OTIPs and CMMC certifications. For any questions about Sterling, please use the email aliases you will find at the end of the demo. For questions during the demo, please put them into the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, and we will address them at the end. Now, I will turn it over to Cloud Architect Nathan Bennett to demonstrate the VMware's vRealize automation tool.
Great. Thank you so much, Megan, and welcome everyone to this session. So I am a cloud architect here at Sterling. I have been working in the automation space for a number of years now. And I'm very active in the community. So I enjoy having the discussions of how to bring automation to the fore, how to really engage business problems with automation and really use that tool to move businesses at a much faster speed so that they can engage customer needs quicker. And you can always reach out to me for all these different here you see my email, LinkedIn, join the Twitter party, and you can tweet me at Nathan Bennett. And then I also write for the Sterling blog. There's some great articles there if you're interested in finding any information about automation or cloud native architecture. We have a lot of other things out there in terms of VMware and other products. So feel free to take that a look. In terms of the demo for today, we're going to look into vRealize Automation 8. We're going to give a little bit of an overview there. And then we're going to hop into our infrastructure, which is currently, we're utilizing vRealize Automation 8.2. We're using a nested vSphere environment that we can spin up our machines. And then that vSphere environment is using NSX for networking. So we're going to go through an overview to basically see how everything is mapped out for vRealize Automation. We're going to take a look at all the different integrations and endpoints that you can use. We're then, after that overview, which is going to be a little bit of kind of a fire hose, but we're going to get through it pretty quickly together. So we're going to take a look. We're going to dive into vRealize Automation 8 and look at the required endpoints that you need to set up for engaging with them, and then what other infrastructure needs you need to set up just getting started. And then we're moving into the blueprints, seeing how those those things that are set up are utilized within the blueprints. And then after we've created blueprints, we're going to release it to a catalog and show how an individual user that didn't create that blueprint can utilize it. So kind of the idea here is I just built vRealize Automation 8. Now what? And starting there and moving forward. So let's get into the overview. When we first thought of vRealize Automation in 7, the previous release, which is still very prevalent today and still used for multiple different things, we thought of vRealize Automation as one main kind of solution or service. And within it, it had multiple different facets that you utilized. When we moved from vRealize Automation 7 to 8, that changed. And we saw it move from 1 to 4 different services. And those four services are used intertwined in kind of the same fashion, but we call them different things. So for instance, you have Cloud Assembly for your blueprinting and infrastructure endpoint connections and management. We have your service broker that is basically your catalog management that will say, these are the catalogs and that you have for your user. You have CodeStream that is used for your continuous integration and continuous deployment or development that you can use. It's a little bit more GUI based, but you can also use things like webhooks. It's very interesting, all the different ways that you can utilize it. And then finally, we have the vRealize Orchestrator. vRealize Orchestrator is your anything as a service solution. So really, you can call out to multiple different endpoints and send payloads of data in order to create your custom automation to do basically whatever you want. I've had a lot of interesting discussions of everything that vRealize Orchestrator can do. It's a pretty awesome tool. So those are the services that are within vRealize Automation. Now you move out of the core service realm and you look at the integrations and we see how kind of the map continues to fill out. So for instance, we have your single source of truth repos, such as GitLab and GitHub. With Cloud Assembly, we're using an infrastructure as code technique in order to create our blueprints. By using GitHub or GitLab, we can save that code in an independent source and utilize it or pull it into different Cloud Assemblies so that they can be utilized in multiple different locations. Next, every infrastructure that you build probably needs an IP address. So we have different IPAM solutions that you can use, such as SolarWinds or Infoblox, things of that nature. So you can call out and pull IPs from there. Then we have a VMware Marketplace. Now, this is a really interesting integration because it allows customers to be able to pull pre-built blueprints from the marketplace, as well as pre-built templates and things of that nature, and really get started at a quicker pace. Next, we have our friendly Active Directory to allow us single sign-in with different accounts and domains. And then in 8.2, we had a new service pop up, which was Terraform, which we'll be talking about in another webinar and later on, as well as how these two really work together. And Terraform is really a solution that allows you to control your infrastructure in terms of the state of what it is and how to build it out from start to finish. Next, you have your Kubernetes container solutions. So like VMware Tanzu and things of that nature. You can create your integrations for namespace deployment, things like that. You have your software that allows you to basically deploy your application stack, such as Puppet or Ansible, Ansible Tower. And I'm sure at some point we'll see SaltStack out here as well, but you can use SaltStack as independent as well. That's not currently an integration, but maybe in the future. And then finally, we see vRealize operations to be utilized to say where the infrastructure can be built for the best use of your private cloud, how it's being utilized and things of that nature, pulling in that information into vRealize automation. Continuing the map, we look at software-defined networking. So NSX is really kind of the key that combines a lot of these different solutions into your private clouds or public clouds. And we see all of the different endpoint solutions here. Now, these are where you see AWS, Google Cloud, Azure, VMware vSphere for your private cloud, VCF, and EMC on AWS. So all of those different solutions are your endpoint solutions. So really what I'm trying to kind of show here is that from these core services, you really do see a flow of information going out to all these different integrations. Those integrations call it different places and deploy in different ways. It's really the kind of the spider web, as I like to call it, of all the different connection points that vRealize can give you. Now, when we're looking at the actual infrastructure, in vRealize 7, we saw this kind of infrastructure, and I'll just walk you through this. So we have two VRA appliances right in the middle, VRA VA, and those two appliances were behind a load balancer. And then underneath, you see all of the boxes for model MGR, model managers, DEMS, agents, web services. These all show how many machines it took in order to run a load balanced vRealize enterprise solution. And if you're an operations guy, that could be a little bit daunting. So you're looking at about 10 machines right here, right? 10 machines for one solution. You may not really want to go that route. When vRealize 8 came out, it moved from these many machines to this view. So instead of having that many machines for utilizing all of the services in vRealize itself, vRealize appliance itself actually turned into a single node Kubernetes cluster running multiple different pods for all of the services necessary. Now, if you're not familiar with Kubernetes, we'll have different webinars on that as well to kind of help guide you through that. But at the end of the day, this just is a much better solution that saves on the number of boxes that you're running in your environment. Also, it helps vRealize itself manage the load much better than all of those machines. So we kind of went through a little bit of the overview here. And if you're like me, you're probably asking the question, so what? Or who cares? Or where's the blueprinting? And so let's address the first two real quickly, because I think we need to have an understanding of what this product is really used for in order to have a better appreciation of the success value that it brings. So for that, let's go into kind of a story time. And let's talk about our developer named Jack. So Jack wants to develop a new application. In fact, his manager is pushing him to develop it quickly and fastly. So he says, okay, well, let me create a ticket. And he creates a ticket and says, I need some new machines in order to deploy this application. And that goes to the operation team, and Jack starts waiting. And he waits, and he waits, and he waits. Now this leads to a kind of ping pong effect where Jack calls to operations saying, hey, where's my infrastructure? And so on and so forth. And they go back and forth over and over again. Interestingly enough, the longer Jack waits, the more this wait for his infrastructure doesn't really feel like a wait. In fact, it feels like a brick wall. Jack starts getting a little frustrated. Jack starts saying things like, you know what, this is probably not going to happen. Telling his manager, where I'm still waiting on the infrastructure team. And then his manager keeps pushing back. So what does Jack do? Jack goes to the cloud and he says, okay, I can create a free account and just spin up some boxes. And he immediately has the infrastructure that he needs in order to deploy his application, test it, and everything that he needs to do for that. What has legitimately just happened is that Jack has seen the light. And Jack has not only become a believer in that bottom flow, but he's completely forgotten everything else. And he's become an evangelist saying, this is the way. We need to do this every single time for every single issue that we have in our development process and troubleshooting all these different ways, right? And that's the problem that we've seen in IT, especially in operations. So when we look at vRealize automation, what it really does is it fills in that gap. Instead of Jack trying to have to fill in tickets and all these different things, he utilizes a service catalog that integrates ITIL practices and any type of change advisory solutions that need to be integrated. And he can just request those machines, and then he gets those machines. And really, that's what we're looking at here, helping businesses that are held back by practices that are very helpful for businesses, but it slows business velocity. From my experience, a number of things that I've seen that really helps automation become useful, valuable, and powerful is to first actually start with the repetitive actions. These are the things that take 5 minutes, the things that people say, why would you automate that? And you really want to start there. Reason being is when you create a catalog of automations, it is really like rolling a snowball from the top of the hill. It is small at the beginning, but as it grows, the bigger stuff is easier to deal with than the smaller stuff. So what's the next step after the repetitive actions? The high ticket load. These are the pain points of the operation team, right? These are the, well, I've got so many tickets that I have to deal with. Oh, I got so much of this I have to deal with. And it takes this long to do it. So that's where you target your next automations plan. Once you automate those, and this is the hard one, you find the pain points for the actual customer. The customer is whoever is using vRealize automation. So if you're an operations and dev team, the customer may be the developers. And I've seen a lot of businesses where operations and developers don't talk to each other. So this can be a bit of a contention point, but it is an extremely necessary step in this process. So to sum it up, automate the quick and the easy first, and then automate the large and the heavy last. So basically what I'm trying to say is when you start using vRealize automation, don't immediately try to deploy 5 machines with a load balancer and multiple different application deployments. You may be able to, take that big of a bite, but if you start with this sort of mentality, you'll find that those bigger bites are a lot easier to handle once you've got some experience behind you. All right, now let's get into the actual demo here. So here we are logging into our vRealize automation appliance. So let me go ahead and log in here. I'm going to log in as the administrator. So right now I'm wearing the operations team hat and going into vRealize automation with basically God rights. So I'm going to go to Cloud Assembly, and I'm going to look here into the necessary endpoints that I need to do in order to start writing my blueprints, right? So basically think of this as I just deployed 8.2. Now as an administrator, what do I do next? Your first stop is going to be your cloud accounts. These are the main account creations that you have to create to say where you want your infrastructure to be deployed to. If I click the add cloud account here, you can see all of the different solutions that you can add, including private as well as public cloud. This is where you create the basically those zones, those accounts that end up going into the cloud zones, which is your next stop. Your cloud zones is where you take that big chunk of infrastructure and you carve it up into smaller chunks. And then you can tag it to say, okay, this is this tag and it goes in this location. This is this tag and it goes in this location. And by using those tags, when you create a blueprint, you can say which blueprint goes where. Gives you that sort of ability to dictate those things. After cloud zones, you want to make sure that you create your projects. So now you've got your infrastructures, and now you set individuals, administrators, members, what have you, to those projects to say these people have access to this infrastructure. Now that you've got the basis set up, you need to create the next steps for your blueprints, which are 3 specific things. One of which is flavor mappings. You can think of these as t-shirt sizes. They're pretty simple. If you just go in and say, I want to create a small one, you can create the region or the endpoint for which one you want to utilize. And then you just dictate the number of CPUs and memory if it's the private cloud. If it's the public cloud, then you would dictate basically the sizing. And you may have to have a better understanding of the sizing for the public cloud when you do it this way, but that's just an example of how you would create those. Next, you want to make sure to create your images. Now, images are basically templates that you create in your local data centers. Also, these are the templates that you can use in the public cloud. For the local data centers, we will probably have another webinar at some point to go through the important process of how to create these templates. But when you create your endpoint, it automatically is going to scan for the templates that you have, and you can bring those in and name them appropriately to utilize them in your blueprints. Finally, for networking, you need to create your network profiles. This is where you basically stipulate how you want your networking to be utilized for your blueprints. For in this instance, I'm using an NSX network that has that can be utilized for a public IP, as well as different overlays and different on-demand solutions. Here you can see, different things that I've set. For instance, a CIDR. You can see some things about DHCP and things of that nature. And that's it. That's really all of the endpoints and settings that you need to create in order to get started writing your blueprints. So let's do that next. We're going to go over here to design. And this is where all of your blueprints are going to reside. Here you can see a number of blueprints that I have backed up to GitLab. These are the ones that I can use and push and pull from one place to the next and be able to use in different ways. Under design, you can also create your custom resource and resource actions. These are things such as creating like a custom resource like a user, resource actions such as delete user, rename user, things of that nature. Since we're talking about blueprints, let's just go to Cloud Blueprints and let's start from a blank canvas. I'm just going to call this the demo. And this is where that project comes in. And this is for the demo project group. Create. And we have 3 different areas here. On the left, these are all of the objects that you can just drag and drop over to the canvas, which is on the middle. The middle is an overview of how your blueprint is, of what your blueprint is going to create in your environment. And then on the right is your code. If you're really familiar with code and you know how to utilize this, you can just write this code from scratch, right? And that may be a good value for those that understand it. But for this demo, I'm going to take the perspective that I don't really know that much about code. And I want to try to move forward with this without that understanding. So let's just start with vSphere. I'm just going to start building a machine. So I click and drag the reference over here to the middle. And as you see, I move it over here, the code populates with the information necessary for that resource. I just want one machine and I want it to go on a network. And there we go. Well, we have our first challenge, which is the machine and the network aren't connected. And a machine needs to be connected to the network, right? So if you see me hover over, there's this little ball right here. And if I select it, I can drag it over. And there you go. This connects the machine to the network. And you can see here that it adds the code necessary to link the two together. When you're creating a machine, you have to select an image. This is where those images that we were creating come into place. You can see all the different images that I have here from the templates. So I'm just going to say this Ubuntu 20. And now you see that error go away. Next, I talked about having a flavor. So I'm just going to hit enter, and you can see it automatically populate a number of different settings. So I'm just going to start typing in flavor, and there I have it. And I'm going to say medium. Now you see this error message pop up again. Well, that's because flavor is dictating the CPU and memory count, and I have hard-coded CPU and memory here. So I'm just going to remove that. Finally, I'm going to put in a name. Wait a second. I want to create a name that my customer can create. So let me go over here to inputs. I'm going to click new, and I'm going to say name. And here you can see all the different functions that you can create for all the inputs that you want. But I want this to be a drop-down value. So I'm just going to say, I'm going to create an enumerated value. I'm going to say demo for 1. And how about Sterling for the next one? Create. So now we've created that input over here on this area. If we go back to code, we see that the input's also been created. So now we have an input, but we want that to be utilized on the resource. So let's go back to name. And I'm going to input the variable in order to say, I want this input dot, I want the name input to be utilized under name. One thing to note, your networking needs to be dictated here as the name. For my networking, as you saw under network profiles, its name was NSX demo. So this will tell it to use the NSX demo network profile. These are just some of the properties that you can utilize. As I can see, when I hit enter, you can see different properties here if you want to try to work through it through code. However, an easier way of doing it is just to go to properties, and you can see which resource I'm looking at, and then you can check this box that shows all properties. I'm definitely not going to go through this because there is a lot of different things, but if you're new to code, this may be a real easy tool for you to create your blueprints. Okay, I think I'm good with this. This is just a basic blueprint for deploying a machine. And that machine is that machine template has everything that I need. So let's click deploy. I'm just going to call this demo. We're going to use the current draft. And under inputs, you see the name here. I'm going to say demo again. And we see it starting to deploy. Within a little bit, we should see some information here to show the resources being spun up. And you can kind of dig into all of the different facets behind it so you can see the behind the scenes workload that it's doing. If I hop over to my vCenter, in a little bit, I should see a pop-up that shows the machine being kicked off. So if we give it just a couple more seconds here, see that machine. Let's take a look at the history. And create in progress just popped up for the vSphere machine. And we see it kicking off here. Now I'm going to fast forward the timeline here a little bit. I'm going to say that as an administrator, I've already checked it. It's good. I like how it's deploying, and I think it's good for my developers to use. So how do I release it to the catalog? So I'm going to version it. I'm going to version it just 1. And I'm going to click this box that says release this version to catalog. Create. So now new version 1 created. And if I close this and go back here, I can see my version 1 showing on the cloud templates. So that is for Cloud Assembly. Now let's go to our catalog service, which is Service Broker. And we're going to go over to the Content and Policies tab. Going to create a new content source for our VMware Cloud templates. We're just going to call it demo. Under projects, we're going to click our project demo, make sure it validates and that it sees that there is items available. And then we're going to create an import. Under content sharing, we're going to go to our demo, add items. And we see here that our demo blueprint is available. So we're going to add that. And here under content, I can make any adjustments to the request form that I would like to make. So if I wanted to customize the form, move additional elements over here, maybe add a nice little image or things of that nature, I can drag those over and adjust as necessary. Let me scroll down so you can see the other general elements that for some reason are hiding under here. I'm okay with this. So I'm just going to click cancel. And then I'm going to go over here to catalog. And now as the administrator for the demo group, I can see for the project, demo project, I can now see that this is here. Now let's move over to, let's take off the administrator hat and let's see what this looks like as a user. So I'm going to log into my Active Directory domain. I'm going to use our developer Jack here. Let's go ahead and hop in here. And you can immediately see that Jack doesn't have as much access as the administrator does, obviously. He only has access to the catalog service, so he can only go to Service Broker. So if he clicks Service Broker, we'll have that load up. And Jack now has access to utilize this demo, and he can go and he can request, and he can set a deployment name. He can set the dropdown here that we've set. So it could be demo or it could be Sterling. We'll call this Jack's VM, and he can submit that. And he can see these resources immediately being built. You can also see all of the resources that are available to his group itself as well. So that gives you an idea of what VRA is, what problem it's trying to solve for businesses, and where it's going from start to finish of deploying infrastructure from the setup of, you have VRA 8 set up and moving forward from there, the whole now what. I really want to thank everyone for being here. And I'd like to turn this over if there's any questions or comments that we want to take at this time.
It does not look like there are any questions today. So thank you everybody for coming, and we will make sure to get you a recording of this demo afterwards. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.